Hello, everyone. Welcome to VLGA Connect. Good to have you with us, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening to us on your podcast player. It's great to be back with you. I'm Chris Eddy, and coming up on our show today, sponsored by Hunt & Hunt Lawyers, the Mayor of Glen Eira City Council, Councillor Simone Zmood, is here. We're going to talk about the Council's successful application for a rate cap variation. Nominations have opened for the 2026 Mary Rogers Awards, recognising the significant contributions and achievements of women councillors as civic leaders in local government. We'll be talking to last year's inaugural winner, Cr Kylie Spears, about why these awards are important. But first, it's time to catch up with the latest from VLGA Connect News. This week on VLGA Connect News, serious voting fraud allegations cloud a Victorian by-election, a veteran council CEO calls time on a stellar career, and a local community says a heavy goodbye to a beloved aquatic centre. First, to the city of Whittlesea, where a major investigation is underway following stunning allegations of voting fraud in the Laylaw ward by-election. The VEC has confirmed a significant pattern of multiple ballot returns, intercepting dozens of suspected fraudulent votes before they could impact the final count. Electoral Commissioner Sven Blumel says while the interference was caught quickly, any attempt to subvert the democratic process is a serious crime, carrying up to 5 years in prison. The VEC has officially referred the matter to Victoria Police and the local government inspectorate for an immediate criminal investigation. Meanwhile, in the West Pyrenees, Shire Council is preparing for a major leadership transition. Chief Executive Officer Jim Nolan has announced his retirement, bringing to an end more than 11 and a half years at the helm at the municipality and capping off a distinguished 37-year career in local government. Mr Nolan first took up the top job at Pyrenees Shire in late 2014 after 2.5 decades of service across several Victorian councils, including Glenelg, Southern Grampians and Northern Grampians. He'll officially wrap up in July to travel and spend time with family. Glen Eira residents are facing a 5% rate increase for the upcoming financial year. The ESC has approved the council's request to exceed the state's standard rate cap by an extra 2.25%. We'll find out why the council has gone down this path when Councillor Simone Zmood joins me for a discussion in just a little bit here on VLGA Connect. In Wyndham, the ongoing mayoral saga shows no signs of slowing down. Councillor Preet Singh is digging in his heels, resisting mounting calls to resign. Those calls have now been joined by local federal member Joanne Ryan, following a fourth community protest, and a fifth is reportedly being planned. It's also emerged that Councillor Singh is under investigation by Victoria's Justice Department over whether he should be dismissed as a Justice of the Peace. In the state's southwest, Moyne Shire Council has voted unanimously to decommission and demolish the Belfast Aquatics Community Pool in Port Fairy. An independent assessment revealed widespread structural failure, a failing electrical network and a major pool leak, with short-term fixes estimated at up to $6 million. To the city of Melton, which is seeking expert state guidance on the use of crumb rubber infill in synthetic sports pitches. Councillors want updated data on potential health and environmental risks as they look to establish best practice standards and explore more sustainable alternative materials for future sporting grounds. In the outer southeast, Casey City Council is demanding much tougher federal and state gambling reforms following the Commonwealth's response to a landmark gambling inquiry. Casey Council says the proposed restrictions on sports betting ads during live broadcasts simply don't go far enough. Back to Whittlesea, where the council has declared enough is enough, launching a blistering attack on the Department of Transport and Planning over the state of local arterial roads. A council audit uncovered over 1,300 maintenance defects, including severe potholes and damaged guardrails. The mayor there, Laurie Cox, says repeated pleas to the state government have been ignored, and he's urging frustrated residents to bypass council and complain directly to the Department of Transport. And finally, to Loddon Shire Council, which is making an urgent plea to the state government for $9.5 million in emergency funding. It's warning that severe flood damage to the Skinners Flat Reservoir is threatening the structural integrity of the dam, which is risking the safety of the nearby Wedderburn township. The council is currently prioritising a funding list to deal with the compounding pressures of inflation and state cost shifting. That is the latest from VLGA Connect News. For more of what's happening around the sector across the nation, listen to the Local Government News Roundup podcast, sponsored by the VLGA and available wherever you listen to podcasts. Well, last week, Victoria's regulated the Essential Services Commission approved a one-year rate cap variation for Glen Eira City Council. It means that those residents will have a 5% rate rise in the coming financial year. That's topping up on the 2.75% statewide cap. And we thought we'd go straight to the source to find out about the process that led to this and the thinking behind it. Who better than the Mayor of Glen Eira, Councillor Simone Zmood, who joins us, and lovely to have you back again, Simone. How are you?
I'm not as well as I'd like to be given the weather and a slight cold, but happy to be back, and thank you for having me, Chris.
Sorry to hear about the bug. Hopefully it is short-lived for you. So this decision to seek a higher rate cap, obviously not a decision taken lightly. Can you take us inside the chamber and the thinking that led up to ultimately achieving this decision from the ESC last week?
Absolutely. So I think the really important thing to emphasise is that we're continually consulting with the community about what's important to them. And we've been doing that for years. I've been a councillor since 2020. We've been doing it very deeply for the last 2 to 4 years, particularly, and saying we've got services, we've got infrastructure, costs for those are going up faster, and inflation and construction costs are going up faster than what the rate cap has been. So getting them to give us feedback on what we should be doing, how we should be making sure that we balance it all and continue to meet and service communities' needs. So every year we look at, as part of the budget process, part of the strategic process, thinking about what we can do, what we'd like to do, and where we can make a difference. So we've been continually looking at how we can reduce costs, find efficiencies, and obviously responsibly we also need to look at revenue in all different forms, so rates, fees and charges, and all those types of things. And it came to the point we endorsed a financial sustainability strategy in December last year, where we felt it was probably time to talk more deeply about applying for rate cap variations. So Glen Eira, for years and years, probably a decade, has been either lowest, second lowest, or third lowest rating council in metropolitan Melbourne. So relative to our comparables. And that's something that's sort of the history. We were a low rating council when the rate cap was brought in. And so it's just stepped up that way since, with no real adjustment about what the needs are. And so being a pretty lean, efficient council historically, what council must have done is increased it when it was needed. So what we've done this year is said we've got lots of different levers. We've reduced costs, we've found efficiencies. We've decided to apply for a 1 year only rate cap variation, which would take us up from the rate cap of 2.75 up to a 5% increase.
Right. So, critics will often say you should look inward before you even contemplate this. You're saying you've done that in terms of internal cost-saving measures. What sorts of things did you look at to be satisfied that you'd done as much as you could there before taking this step?
I don't think you've ever done as much. That's a continuing process. But what I can say is some pretty significant decisions were made earlier in this council term and by the previous council group. So, for instance, the decision was made to no longer directly provide childcare services. We had 3 centres, and over the last few decades, obviously, different community groups and private operators are providing early learning. So by doing that, we cut down costs a little bit. Then in response to the Royal Commission into aged care, and many councils have done this, we're no longer directly providing as a council in-home living services for our older adults. But what we've done is partnered with our neighbour Bayside Council, who's now providing it for us. So our residents are still getting a council-delivered service, which they told us was very important to them. But because of economies of scale, Bayside being able to deliver it for 2 council areas, so pretty much over doubling the catchment pool of people, they can deliver it in a more cost-effective way. But not just that, they actually were already meeting the criteria that we would have needed to upgrade to meet the federal government's requirements. So all of those things have reduced our costs. We've looked at operational efficiencies, and there's a few million there. I'm sure as AI rolls out, we'll not only be able to improve quality of service, but there'll probably be additional cost savings there as well. Yeah. So it's an ongoing process, those cost savings.
Indeed. The ESC sets a pretty high bar for granting a rate variation. What was the criteria that you were required to demonstrate that you had a genuine need here?
So we needed to demonstrate that we'd already made good inroads and that we were looking very systematically at the organisation. And I think our financial sustainability strategy, which endorsed, I said, is in December last year, really laid out that we're looking at how do we keep our budget balanced. Are we able to raise revenue in different areas, not necessarily rates, keep our costs down? Are we building up reserves so that when we need to put in a major investment, that we've got the ability to do that? And if we can get a grant, that we can co-fund the project? Are we managing our debt responsibly? And also continuing to invest in the services that community uses every day. So we needed to demonstrate that we were being really systematic and we weren't just doing it as a first resort. That we'd already looked and done many other things before looking at raising extra revenue through a rate increase.
What is your debt position, and was taking on more debt one of the options you looked at any stage?
So we're, to use colloquial terms, we're maxed out on debt.
Right.
When we built the Canadian Memorial Swimming Pool, so we rebuilt it, redeveloped the whole site, and it's a much loved community facility. It was opened in January last year. But we took out debt to help fund that. We did receive money from the federal government as an election commitment. So it was $15 million and then a bit more from the state. But for a pool that's going to cost $75 million, that's a lot of debt for a council to carry. And this infrastructure is just getting more and more expensive. So what we're trying to do in this financial sustainability strategy is actually build up our cash reserves so that we don't need to keep on looking at debt, particularly as debt's become significantly more expensive over the last few years.
Yeah. So how do you balance the community feedback that I'm sure you got, that there's a cost of living crisis on? People are saying, well, we can't afford to pay more in rates. How do you balance that feedback with, it's not an easy thing, is it, to with the difficult decisions you have to make?
It was an interesting process, and I'm a ratepayer myself. The idea of asking everyone to pay more is a bit scary. I'm out in the community. I'm going to the supermarket. I'm walking down the streets. People come up to you and say, "I don't want to bother you, but," and then launch into whatever's top of mind for them. To help councillors move through the decision, we did a range of things, and thank you to our CEO and CFO for doing that. A previous council who'd actually applied for a rate cap variation came and spoke to us, not a Metro Council. It's been a long time since Metro Council's done that, and explained how the community reacted. We obviously had the Essential Services Commission come and actually speak to the councillors and to hear our thoughts. I might have laid it on a bit thick by saying I'd be incredibly disappointed if they didn't grant it after all the work that we'd done to demonstrate it was needed. And what we applied for was really modest. We're only talking about just under $3 million extra off a budget that's over $200 million. So we're not talking about a huge increase. We're really trying to spread around the cost cuts, the revenue increases, so that we're not harming anyone that severely. And it was interesting, after the meeting where we decided to apply for the rate cap variation, which was end of February this year, I actually printed out the report and carried it in my bag for about a month, thinking residents are going to come up to me, they're going to ask questions. We had a terrific graph in there that actually showed for the different value properties what the impact would be. And we've quantified that. So for the 5% increase, which we've been granted, although it's not yet been endorsed by council to implement it, that will come with our budget approval process. For the average value property in our municipality, it's an extra $84 a year. So about $7 a month. And as soon as I started telling people that and showing them the graph, they're like, oh, in fact, some people even said, why didn't you apply for more?
Really?
That was interesting. But I think what was most striking for me is just about no one, like literally no one raised it with me verbally. I think I've received, since then, I've received 2 emails out of 160,000 residents, 60,000 dwellings. It's been pretty much a non-event.
Right. I am a bit surprised to hear that. Of course, your budget's out on consultation now, I gather, so there's more opportunity for people to have a say, I suspect.
And we absolutely
Mm.
encourage community members, not just residents, but traders, people who come into the area to actually look at our budget and give us feedback
Yeah.
on it.
Did you have a plan B if the ESC said no?
Well, our plan B would have been looking very carefully at what we continue to offer. So the feedback that we've had over the last 4 years for community members is to try and continue delivering the services we do, focusing on services that deliver the most public value, so for the most people or for particular groups that are very vulnerable, and looking at either cutting out of some services or cutting back. And the other major area we can do is just look at our capital, our infrastructure, capital planning
Yeah.
plan,
Yeah.
and just doing things more slowly.
So that means some projects would have need to be deferred or cut or cancelled potentially.
Yeah, generally it'll be slowing it down, and we're an old municipality. Our infrastructure in many areas is over 100 years old. So you've got the maintenance, you've got renewal, and then you've got upgrades. And with the construction costs going up the way they are, that's become more expensive. And sometimes if you leave things later, they end up costing more because the deterioration has been greater.
It's a 1 year exemption. So 12 months down the track, how confident are you that this will have helped you stabilise your long-term financial position sufficiently?
So again, referring back to our financial sustainability strategy, we've thought about all the different aspects that we can look at and how we can work with each of those. We've only applied for a 1 year rate cap variation. I'm fairly confident that this councillor group has no appetite to apply for another one next year. And we do know, quoting, I think, Einstein, that the greatest power on earth is compounding.
Yes.
So the $3 million extra, almost $3 million extra we'll get this year, we will get again next year and the year after, plus a little bit on top of that with whatever the rate cap is. And what we're trying to do is to cash back our reserves or our open space levy and to build up a strategic asset reserve so that we've got cash sitting there. So if we can get grants for projects, for capital works, that we actually can match them, which is what the current requirements are from state and federal government. They're no longer giving out 100% of the cost of projects very often.
Yeah. Well, that's been really interesting to hear about the process you've been through and the thought processes of the council in arriving at this, and I hope that all works out the way that you're hoping it will in the months ahead. Before I let you go, Simone, it is a state election year. I think you've got 3 electorates merging there in Glen Eira. How's that shaping up for you in terms of your advocacy activities and, likely changes of MPs potentially in November?
So we've got 3 electorates, as you said. We've got Oakley, so Steve Demopoulos MP, Nick Stakos for the Bentley electorate, and David Southwick for the Caulfield electorate. And I guess certainly Oakley and Bentley look like they're very safe seats. David Southwick in Caulfield has been there quite a long time. It doesn't have as big a margin, but the margin went up in the last election over the previous election. But I would always encourage candidates to run as well, because I think a good democracy functions on a good oversight and really strong, both strong government and strong opposition and independents who are constantly questioning and challenging and investigating. So we've got determined what our advocacy will be, and it's in 2 parts. It's sort of infrastructure asks or project asks and policy, working together with the state government. That's all available on our website if anyone wants to look at it. We've sent it to the current MPs. And we're really hoping that despite the difficult times, and I know everyone, not just councils, are complaining and households about the cost of living and the cost of doing what we need to do, that there will be some funds coming to Glen Eira, some really important projects for us.
Yeah. And before I get mail, I did use the word merging erroneously. They're not merging, of course. They're converging there in Glen Eira, those electorates. You're also part of the consortium of councils that are arguing for a rethink of the glass recycling rollout. And I know you're a big fan of the container deposit scheme, Simone. Do you think this campaign's got legs?
Well, I think it's got validity. And
Yeah.
I think that's a really important aspect of it, is that it wasn't just a bunch of councils saying, how do we get out of it? That we actually collectively together got it independently investigated, costed. I know that the state government has questioned some of the assumptions. But what we do know for certain is the contained deposit scheme is working really well in our area. It's been embraced really widely by our community members and our visitors. We're currently rolling out the wire bins for contained deposit schemes things on 100 of our public bins across our major activity centres to make it even easier for people to participate. So there'll be no more bin diving. People will just be able to pick up if they want to take a can or a bottle to a contained deposit scheme and get the money, that it'll be easily accessible. So it's about us each playing a part. And I think there's no point rushing into something that has quite a few cons in terms of separate glass recycling, because if it's not being used widely, and people have got purple bins and trucks are racing around looking for those purple bins and people aren't putting them out, then we've not really improved things from a financial aspect. It's going to add several $1 million that we'll have to do cost recovery on in terms of waste just for Glen Eira alone. And
Yeah.
we're a pretty small compact municipality at 39 square kilometres and about 60,000 dwellings and then another few thousand businesses.
Yeah.
Then on top of that, there's the environmental aspects of having trucks driving around looking. So it would kind of be a bit of a Where's Wally looking for those purple bins.
Yeah.
So we think it's worth pushing and expanding the contained deposit scheme to match what's currently operating in other states, and then seeing whether it really is needed. And I might add, I've lived in other places, and we have a lovely system here where we all have our individual bins that we roll out onto the street. But in other countries, that's not how it operates.
Yeah.
And, so I don't think we have to default to that, especially if it's a very expensive and not necessarily very environmental solution.
Well, if people want to hear more about the pros and cons of that, we did a special episode a couple of weeks ago with the mayors of Manningham and Marybeck, early adopters there at Marybeck, which is worth a look if you haven't seen that. And I'm so pleased to hear about the wire bins on the side of your public bins being rolled out. I recall talking to Louise at Port Phillip some months ago. They're your neighbours, aren't they? Did you see that happening in Port Phillip and think there's a good idea?
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
wasn't the only council that kept on bringing photos back, and we had a few residents send photos as well. My ward neighbours, East St Kilda. So East St Kilda is partly in Glen Eira in my ward and partly in City of Port Phillip. So I spent a little bit of time down Carlisle Street and I saw the bins there. Apparently they're in City of Yarra. And I just kept on hearing fabulous, stories about it. So I took photos. Another council or two also took photos. We kept on sending it in. We applied for a grant. And with that grant, we're now rolling those out to 100 locations.
Excellent. Excellent. What a great story. All right. Thank you, Simone. It's always great to catch up with you. And we've covered a bit of ground there, but particularly your rate cap exemption, one of the only metropolitan councils, I think, in quite some time to successfully achieve that. Great to have you on VLGA Connect. All the best to you.
Thanks, Chris. Keep well.
Councillor Simone Zmood there, the Mayor of Glen Eira. Well, as we mentioned, the Mary Rogers Awards are back in 2026 and nominations are open. These awards, delivered by the VLGA in partnership with the Victorian Government, are celebrating and acknowledging the significant contributions and achievements of women councillors in local government. And who better to help us set the scene for this year's awards than one of the award, in fact, the main inaugural winner from last year, Councillor Kylie Spears from Maroondah City Council. Hello, Kylie. Welcome back to VLGA Connect.
Thanks, Chris. It's lovely to be with you.
Always good to see you. How does it feel some months on to be recognised as that inaugural winner? Has it changed anything for you?
It's still a little bit surreal, being honest, because I hadn't thought that it was going to be. I was sure it wasn't, in actual fact. And so, so it's still, and I'm sure I will look back even more so, and it's lovely. But it still seems a little bit like, oh wow, that was, and it is. So, which is really nice.
Why do you think these awards matter?
Because recognition of women in local government is incredibly important to actually role model and to be out there and show for other women you can stand, you can do it, and you're still okay to go ahead and do. and you can juggle things, and you don't have to be perfect. You do not have to do it all. You just have to be you.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you on that. Do you feel like you did anything in particular that was special to be deserving of the award?
I don't know about special to be deserving of the award. I think for me, it's always been about being authentic. So being me.
Yeah.
And you see what you get, right? What you see is what you get. It's absolutely with that part. So I think that's, a part of it. And when you're true to yourself, lots of things happen from there, is what I've discovered.
Right. Has it created any sort of ripple effects in the conversations that you have with people in the community, or perhaps around the councillor table?
Around the councillors and other councillors across the state as well. There's been lots of conversation there about, oh, I saw that. That was really good. And, what have you done? Or I'm doing this now. So it's also started conversations about what other women are doing and where they're really proud of what they're achieving in their community. Some big, some small, it doesn't matter, but just really how they're connecting in and how that is, which is awesome.
Yeah, so on that last bit, there's probably people doing great work in their communities that don't see themselves as award worthy. What do you say to those people?
It's the same as anything in life, isn't it? You've already put your hand up to go on council, and that was a huge step in itself, more than likely. Put your hand up, put yourself in. Talk to people around you who might nominate you or do something. Talk to your council and see what they can help you with. As we were discussing earlier, what I learned was that my council, in that extra, I suppose, going that extra little bit, actually got references from community and from government and from all sorts of our community that are connected to me, and included those in their submission. So I really think it's quite powerful to hear from your community about what you're working with and doing within your own community, and hearing it from our community, not just from a councillor or council itself, if that makes sense.
So that it certainly does. And that reference issue, I guess, is a key bit of advice for people thinking about going through this process. Is it a difficult, onerous process? Can you remember from last year?
Well, I didn't do it. So I mean,
someone nominated you. Yes. Yeah.
And in actual fact, as it turned out, I had multiple nominations without knowing, because a couple of them missed the part where it said, please notify the applicant.
Right. Okay.
Oh, the nominee, right?
Yeah.
So, which is fine. But so there were, so when mine went in, the one that I was told about, so I had, I was able to provide, a couple of things that they'd asked questions to, etc. But really was my council and the nominator who actually did all of that part. So I found out afterwards a bit more about it.
It occurs to me, as we talk a lot about civility and the lack thereof in public discourse these days, and anecdotally it seems women are overrepresented in those making the decisions to not stay for a longer term because of those issues that they're dealing with. Does that suggest that this process, these types of recognition processes, are even more important, increasingly important, as those civility issues seem to come to the fore more and more?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, Chris, and they are. Because recognising and acknowledging the good work that's being done, not just the hits, the slaps, the sledges, all the rest of it, right, that we get, the good, the bad, the ugly. It's lovely to have that recognition as well. And we don't get it that often. So when it actually occurs, it's a really nice part.
Yeah. So the Mary Rogers Awards, there are 4 categories. I thought we just might mention those. So there's the main award, which you know very well, the Emerging Woman Leader Award, the Gender Equality Council Champion Award, which is for Metro and Interface, and again, that same category for rural and regional. So there's an opportunity to recognise contributions across a continuum of sorts there, isn't there?
Absolutely. And I think for the councils too, to actually celebrate some of their amazing programs. Council's so underrated as to what it does, honestly. I mean, local government in Victoria, across the country, does amazing things every single day. our community don't always know that. They don't always see that. In fact, most of the time they don't see it until it impacts them, if that makes sense. But, you can actually help your council to celebrate some of those amazing programs that they've put in place, particularly around gender equality, and for our rurals, that's why it's great to have their own section as well, because sometimes that can be quite challenging to think that you're competing against some of those larger metros who might have so much more resource, right, than you might have. But, they're still doing amazing work in this area.
Terrific. I couldn't have said it better. So thank you, Kylie. It's great to have your help to spread the message that the awards are open for nominations now across those 4 categories, and all the details you'll find on the VLGA website, vlga.org.au. Great to see you. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Chris. It was lovely.
Councillor Kylie Spears there from Maroondah City Council. And if you'd like to know more about the Mary Rogers Awards, just head to vlga.org.au for all the details. Now, before we leave you this week, the VLGA is partnering with the Australian Institute of Company Directors to deliver the first in a series of webinars focused on the local government sector. Your role, your impact, essentials for local government councillors will be held on Wednesday the 10th of June from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. It's a free webinar that I'll be hosting, and it'll be joined by the VLGA President and Monash Councillor, Dr. Josh Fergus, Deputy Victorian Ombudsman and former Council CEO Karen Ellis, and Isaac Regional Council Mayor Councillor Kelly Vivi. The session is designed for councillors just starting out in their career or community members who are considering putting their hand up to be a councillor in the future. And you can register now at the AICD website. That's our show for this week. Thanks for watching and listening to VLGA Connect. Thanks to Hunt and Hunt Lawyers, our sponsors, and we'll be back with you again next week with more from VLGA Connect.